In the last episode, we started on the lower portion of our courtyard retaining wall. This time we move up top and tackle the main wall that will retain the earth on the southeast section of our Ferrocement dome. This is part 4 of our Ferrocement house build. Before we get started, I'm going to show y'all around a little so you know what we're doing here. We start from behind the courtyard retaining wall and pan over and look up to the top of the main entry arch. The new construction will be a continuation of the existing wall that will swoop around and allow us to obtain our third and highest tier of our soil grade. From here we continue to pan across the existing wall until we reach the dining room bubble. This is the room with the 3 window penetrations in the retaining wall. Since filming this, we have removed the tree from our earth cavity as well as the vines. As we continue to pan across, we see the earth-sheltered wood addition and the top beam of our topless dome where we plan to build an oval roof. We have 4 of these earth cavities between the retaining wall and the dome. It is this structure that will allow us to have a nearly 90% earth-sheltered house. Eventually, we'd like to have an upstairs patio for enjoying the cool summer mornings we get here in Texas.
So I've been getting this ready for this top retaining wall. It's going to swoop around and curve back. So I've been splicing into the pre-existing structure we had, adding rebar, vertical and horizontal rebar, and I'm going to weld it together. But you can see over here we'll have it kind of temporarily put together. It's going to come over and curve around, and I got my trench over here excavated so I can get a good strong footer on there. I totally do have a fan blowing on my welder, because for whatever reason this little firepower welder I have, a little cutout in the back where they put a computer fan or something, they chose not to install it. I have my rebar reinforcement done, and now it's time to put on the cow panel or the horse panel. For this top part, just to save some money and save some weight, I did the 4x4 grid instead of the 2x4, and in preparation of putting it on there, I cut off about a 10-foot by 8-inch strip off the bottom here, just so this part, this little lip, will hang down below the height of the rest of my wall in order to prevent, a landslide or earth migrating down, up, and over.
Jumping forward slightly, we now have the majority of the framing done and are building scaffolds to work from and installing the remesh on the back side and the hardware cloth on both sides. This wall is being built much more heavy duty than the lower courtyard section for a couple of reasons. First of all, it has some fairly large flat areas that don't naturally have the strength of a curve or a dome. Secondly, a good portion of this wall is flying in the air until we get our final grading done, so it must be strong enough to support the weight of the wet concrete and not allow for flexing and cracking so that the cement can cure properly. I chose to end this wall abruptly because as we grade, we have the option to backfill both front and back of this wall to achieve the desired gentle slopes that will transition between the different levels of our terracing. Also, we plan to build stone raised garden and flower beds once we get to the landscaping portion of this build to soften all the transitions and various grades that we have. Needless to say, this wall has a ton of metal in it. We have T-posts, rebar, horse panels, remesh, hardware cloth, and probably half a mile of wire ties. This little dome on the back side is eventually going to be completely buried, so we'll be remodeling this window to either completely delete it or turn it into a skylight. We haven't decided what to do yet. The structural components of this wall include the top flange as well as a couple reinforcing horizontal ribs along the back side. We also have what we are calling a flying buttress that connects the outer wall directly to the dome. All this is an effort to prevent the wall from changing shape or position when we bury it. I feel very confident that the lower portion of the wall can't move because it's anchored in place by the curved courtyard wall and its continuous reinforced concrete footer. My dad is working on attaching hardware cloth to one of the reinforcing ribs.
Just got to get this stuff pinned up. Not really tied off, but pinned up so we can put the rest of the lath on.
For this section of the wall, I went back to the 1 foot center rebar grid that we used in the rest of the flat areas, like the slab and the main dome and the pre-existing retaining wall. It all has a really nice, orderly fashion to it. We buy these 1/4 mile spools of galvanized electric fence wire to use as our wire ties. It comes in several gauges, and if you go too thin, the wire just snaps under tension before it can put a good squeeze on things and get it sucked up tight. Also, if you go too big, it has a hard time getting real tight because it just shears off as you twist it during those last few critical twists that get things so tight. I guess that's because of metal fatigue or something, I don't know. So something in the 14 to 16 gauge size seems to be what works best for us. Because we use so many wire ties, we like to make them in bulk to save time. What we do is we wrap the wire around a board and make a flat spool of ties. And while it's still on the board, we just cut it with a grinder. Or sometimes if the wire is a thin gauge, we'll use some big shears and cut it that way. So all a wire tie is a U-shaped wire that you can poke through one side and twist from the other. What I'm going to show you here is how to tack up a piece of material with a wire tie from the inside. I roughly get the material where it needs to be, and then once I'm ready to attach it, I do a quick final alignment check, and then with a straight piece of wire, I bend the U shape with one leg of it much longer than the other, so I can poke the wire through to the other side, spin it around, and hook whatever I need to before I pull it back through. If you have a helping hand, it is much faster to have someone else poke from one side and you twisting on the other. Once you get to the point that you have hardware cloth tacked up on both sides, you can now fill in with the rest of the bolt ties. What we try to do is poke from the outside face of the wall and have all the sharp twisted areas on the inside. We do this because it's a lot easier on your hands and gloves to have the side that you'll be placing the cement from not cutting you to pieces. The placement of the wire ties is also important. We always try to get as many of the ties as possible to grab as much of the reinforcing structure as possible. As I constructed this wall, I lined up the 4x4 inch horse panel with the 1 foot on-center rebar, giving us plenty of major intersections where ties can grab hardware cloth on both sides with the panel and rebar in between them. It doesn't have to be this way, but I just like it like this. No one will ever see all the effort once you get it covered in mud, so it's up to you if you think it's worth it to do so. My preferred method for twisting wire is to use a pair of end-cutting pliers or dikes like this. We have tried many things in the past, including aircraft pliers and hog ring ties, but this method has stuck with us. As I twist the wire, I pull tension on it, and at the same time with the other hand, I push on the wall, and I think this helps me get everything nice and tight. It is amazing how a floppy wall becomes rigid as you add ties to it. This is where we just go nuts. We always wind up adding hundreds of ties to each section of the wall we build. When we're done, often we wind up with a metal wall so sturdy it could probably perform the task we ask of it without the cement. My dad and I differ in opinion as to when is the best time to trim the ends of the wire. Do you trim as you go, or do you leave it all for later and trim them all at once when you're done? The detail work, like this drop down in the wall, takes a little more effort than the flat areas, but the method for tying is the same. As I trim the hardware cloth to make the bin, I try to plan the cut so I can maintain my overlap in the material. Don't be afraid to make as many relief cuts as you need to get the material to make the bin. Again, no one will ever see this once the concrete goes on, so just put out however much effort you think is appropriate. Here's how I decided to tackle this corner. I thought about it like wrapping a gift with paper. I planned the cuts to avoid wrinkles and then folded them over each other so that the largest piece would be on the top, giving me the smoothest finished product. Then, once I got it how I like it, I lock it in with wire ties. If there are any pointy bits that bother you, they can be hammered down or you can bury them with concrete later. Framing a wall goes pretty fast, and so does the cement work.
The thing that eats up a lot of time is the shaping of the hardware cloth and then the installation of the hundreds of wire ties. But before you know it, you'll be playing in the mud, and it is so much nicer to place mud on a rigid and structurally sound wall than a floppy, questionable one. On a typical day of placing mud, we'll usually go through 2 to 3 90-pound bags of Portland cement. This is mostly due to some last-minute OCD problems we have where we decide that more ties or whatever distraction we invent are necessary before we can place the mud. As my dad likes to remind me, he used to place 2 bags worth of cement by himself in the afternoon, and us together are only doing 3 bags. This leads us to having many cold joints in our work. We always spray the edge of the old concrete with concrete glue, the same glue that we use in our mix. According to the product label, this will increase the adhesion of the new cement to the old, not only making for a stronger cold joint, but also a more waterproof one. On this day, we got an extra late start and wound up working well into the night.
We're liberals, damn it. We're tanned, rested, and gluten-free. And we are the type of people who will throw a trash can through a Starbucks window and then climb through and say, you know, while we're here, could I get a double milk and brine? Very little fun.
Got the Girl Scout juice ×2. Ooh, great.
Maybe you can watch this while I go drag that water hose down here.
Yeah, you probably need a beer too. Have I told y'all that this dome was once used as a Hollywood movie set? Seriously, the movie was Split Image, released in 1982, whose cast included Peter Fonda, James Woods, Karen Allen, Brian Dennehy, and it starred Michael O'Keefe as a young cult initiate. The scene filmed at our house featured Karen Allen and Michael O'Keefe working on the dome as Peter Fonda comforted a young man who was getting yelled at. Anyhow, I'm going to force y'all to endure that scene before we get back to work.
Hey, where's the chant? Make it perfect! 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 Come on, Danny! Make it perfect! Make it perfect! Make it perfect! Make it perfect! Make it perfect!
Oh, Walter, are you okay?
Leave him alone.
Walter can get up by himself. Walter can become stronger.
That's it. You see? God is in Walter's arms and legs. God is making him into a new person. Make it perfect.
Make it perfect.
Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect. Make it perfect.
Make it.
Son, just relax. Slow, deep breaths. Son, deep breaths. Slow, deep breaths. You'll be all right in a few minutes. Gabriel, sometimes you know nothing. Sometimes you can be so cruel and evil. This is our home. This is not some place where we exploit the sacred human resource, not some godless communist state, not some mindless multinational conglomerate. This is our home. You're gonna be all right, son. Just relax.
Gabriel is perhaps one of the holiest amongst you. But sometimes even he is caught in the grip of death and life. You're scared, aren't you?
You're scared of slipping back.
Yes, Neil. Please, save me.
Dear God, I love this boy. I would die for him. I want you to rescue him from his worldly mind. Rescue him and sweep him into your ever-loving arms and rescue him. 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 Rescue him.
Rescue him. Rescue him. Rescue him. Rescue him. Rescue him. Rescue him. Rescue him. Rescue him.
Whoa, that's some pretty powerful stuff, huh? Anyways, YouTube has a great modern high definition version of this video with a really good trailer. So I'll put that link in the description in case you're so inclined to spend $3 on an old 1980s cult movie. Then come day we get back to work. I would imagine that in an ideal world, when building a monolithic Ferrocement structure, you would have a continuous pour of concrete with 0 cold joints. But this is the real world, and we're doing this in our free time and can only do what we can when we can. So we wind up with this patchwork of cement panels fitting like puzzle pieces interconnected with a continuous reinforcing latticework of metal. All the houses in this neighborhood were built this way, and we have had 0 failures in our structures over the last 40 years. So don't worry about the cold joints. They're perfectly fine. Anyways, I'm going to cut this video off right here and give everyone a break from the 30-minute gauntlet of the previous 3 videos. Next time we will continue on the lower wall and take care of some utility issues. If you're interested in following me on social media, I have a Facebook page dedicated to this project and an Instagram account where you can see other things I'm into besides Ferrocement. Well, thank you so much for watching, and the links to my social media will be in the description box below. Okay, I lied. I got one more thing I want to plug into this video. I went out to our sister community and took a look at a house that has been vacant for quite some time, but is getting some work done and hopefully will be someone's home again very soon. This house doesn't have any grid power. It's still off-grid with a generator backup. This house has been vacant mostly due to the difficult political, social environment of the property owners association that led to the owner fleeing the town many years ago. But boy howdy, he is back now. And anyway, what I want to look at is the spray foam insulation and share what happened to the 3 inches of foam once the elastomeric roof coating failed. It's just a remarkable example of what can happen when this stuff isn't buried or maintained properly. So, enjoy. So, it's kind of interesting how it was built. So we have the Ferrocement structure. Then this plaster stuff, I think this is the Duracell or Duracell, whatever the waterproofing they were using. And then it was spray foamed on top of that. So it kind of shows, I don't know, it might be better to have the foam as your waterproofing directly on the concrete. It looks like these sheets here, they're falling apart. But the structure itself is extraordinarily sound. See, this is where they're doing it in the past with these big beams, making a grid work. Then they'd bury the houses. Let's see if I can get up here without falling to my death. Ugh. It's a pretty large house here.
think somewhere, I don't know, 1,200, 15, 16, 1,800 square feet is what he said, but I don't know if I believe that. So that's the bedroom, that's the bedroom, that's the bathroom. Then I'm on top of the living room. Then there's kitchen over here. And a garage way over there. Let's see if we can look in. There's the little conversation nook.
So yeah, I just find this fascinating because this is exactly how I plan or had planned or am planning on finishing off our house. The only thing that might be iffy is there was a good long time that we were using a homemade Thurasil. So this Thurasil might not be the real deal, and it could be why it's fallen off, even with the foam on top of it. You know, the only experience with, you know, we have a few experiences with foam on top of houses, and one buried, and one guy became paranoid that he had a wall moving. He thought it looked flatter than it did when he built it, and he wound up digging it up with his backhoe. Anyways, he said the foam that was attached to the Ferrocement shell directly was pristine. That had been buried for 30 years, and it looked brand new once he dug it up and hosed it off. So there's that. But yeah, this is something to think about. It's a little bit scary to me that a house that was done just the way I would have imagined doing it could get into this shape. And I'm hoping that it's just a maintenance issue. That it's not something more indicative of foam on concrete. I don't know. Anyways, I'm ending the video here for real this time. Thank you so much again for your attention, and y'all be good.